In this video, we're going to look at the Data tab of the Limits editor. Right now, we're starting with the sequence where I calculated the frequency response of a speaker and then got the average sensitivity from it as a single value. So great, I have the data now, but if I was on a production line or something, how would I say that the unit is good or bad? For this, we're going to add in a limit step. I'm going to drop in the curves absolute template towards the end of my sequence right before my display. The first thing we're going to do is change what type of data we're setting a limit on. Over here, if I have curves selected, this drop down in the middle will show me all the curves I have available. The same for single values or waveform. Whatever we pick will slightly change the GUI and some of the available options, but the Data tab is similar for all three, so I'm just going to start with curves. From the drop-down, I pick my fundamental. You can see it plots all the data below and then displays it in the graph above. Next, I'll choose which axis I'm taking a limit on. By default, it's set to Y. We could set it to X, which in this example doesn't really make any sense. The other option is Z, which in this case would be measuring the phase. I'll set it back to Y, which in general is the most common axis to take limits on. Down here, I can change the name of our result. In the memory list, you can see what it's called currently, and when I switch it to just frequency response, it will update in the memory list under the Results tab. Now I'll actually set some limits. This table at the top is my upper limit. I can manually type in some x-axis points, and then the corresponding y values, that is the upper limit for this test. After I type them in, you can see it plots it above in the graph. Now I'll do the same for my lower limit. These don't have to be the same exact points, so I don't have to pick 100, 1K, and 10K for down here. I could set them to completely different points, a different number of points, more points. So now we see our curve with our upper and lower limits. If I click apply, it will tell me if it passed or failed. It passes. It will also show me the margin, which is the point closest to the failure, so how much it passed or failed by. There's a visual representation of this on the graph as well. That green point on our fundamental curve is where the margin was calculated. Just to show you how it looks when it fails, I'll edit this top limit from 105 to, let's say, 90. Now, when I click apply, you can see it fails with a different margin. Okay, I want to change these limits to something else. I could manually go in and just change them around, or I could click the clear button and just completely remove them. Another handy shortcut is this copy option. This will take whatever curve is selected in data and apply that in the limits. If we look at the points in the upper limit, they match exactly with the fundamental. Now if you wanted to go in, you could just edit the points manually like we were doing before. But in addition to this, we could utilize this offset feature. If I type in y3 dB and click offset, it will take my y-axis for my upper limit and offset it by positive 3 dB. We could switch the units from dB to percentage, so I could increase by a percentage amount instead of a dB amount. We can do the same thing on the lower limits, and we can utilize negative numbers. Every time I click offset, it will move the limits 3 dB down. If I switch this to positive, it will move the limits up 3 dB. If I click on a single point, I could offset just that single point. Or if I wanted to add more points, I could click the Insert button. Then I could just manually type it in. Alternatively, if I wanted to remove them, I could just click on Delete. So now I run my sequence. I get a result called frequency response that passes with a margin of 3.8, but I'm also getting two curves called frequency response upper and lower. I could take these upper and lower limits from my step and display them alongside the fundamental. Now when I run it, it's very easy to see if it passed or failed, and then where within the limits it passed or failed. In the next video, we'll look at some of the advanced options in the Data tab, as well as the Parameters tab.